right, we're back for part 2. Okay, so just to further this context, we were not in a healthy relationship. I was controlling, I needed to know everything, and I would look through that phone any chance I got. I am not glorifying it, I'm just so embarrassed, I have to make light of it, okay? So it was to the point, guys, that he would send me a picture of him clocking out. I never asked him to do this, but let him not do it one night. So anyway, okay, so this week was October, I think 9th through, I don't know, the 12th, whatever. And this week he worked night shifts and I was training in Brea and I had my first client visit. I had just got promoted at work. So we're just getting right into this, sorry. So, okay. And so he was working night shifts. We didn't see each other Monday. I didn't really like the way it felt. I wanted to see him. So Tuesday I was training and I got out early and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna surprise him. I'm gonna do something nice for him. I've been a little bit wild lately, so we're gonna have dinner when I come home. So I didn't tell him because it was a surprise. I'm driving home, he's not answering my calls, not answering my texts. I'm like, poor thing, he's probably exhausted. And so I have this weird gut feeling, but I'm like, girl, stop, you've already been too crazy, like enough, you're gonna be nice. And so I'm having this conversation on my way home. I get home and still no call, no text from him. I get upstairs and I am hit with this smell of cologne and I'm like, oh, okay. And again, he didn't know that I was coming home early. And so then on his dresser, I had bought him this chain and he loved that chain. And so he would only wear it whenever he was going out or just not doing anything physical, like work or anything. Anyway, it was gone. And I'm like, ooh, so we're going out. So first of all, I'm mad because I had to calm myself down for like thinking that I'm being crazy when I knew he wasn't answering for a reason. And then I'm mad because he's not answering. So I'm calling and calling and calling. He's not answering. And I'm like, ooh. So then I call his mom because I did actually feel a little bit worried. This is the first time he wasn't answering. And so she's like, I haven't heard from him. So she calls him, his sister calls him, he's not answering. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a little scared. We had each other's location on our phone and his was off. So I'm like, I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy already. And so he finally calls me and he snaps at me like, why are you getting my mom involved? Like going off on me. And I'm like, first of all, where the hell are you at? And he's like, I was at my friend's house. And I'm like, okay, well, why couldn't you answer your phone? He's like, I left my phone in the car. I'm like, all right, I guess that makes sense. So I was like, FaceTime me. And so he does not answer his call when I'm FaceTiming. And I'm like, oh, you better answer your call. So he finally answers. And immediately I see in the back seat that there's no car seat. And I'm like, where's the car seat? And he's like, I took it out. We were working on my car. And I'm like, in the back seat you were working on? With who? Who was working on your car? I'm going crazy. I know. Oh, no. Even talking about it, I'm like, ooh, girl, you need some help. Anyway, so he's just like, you're doing the most. Like, I'm tired. I don't want to deal with this right now. Hangs up on me. Says, oh, we're going to have that kind of night tonight. Huh? Curbside service. I'm waiting for you at the door outside, boo. And so I watch him drive up and I go to the car and I'm like, wherever you went, you got some extra courage. So let's talk about it. I automatically reach for his phone and he zooms off in his car and I said, oh my gosh, I am just a boiling pot of anger. He goes upstairs. He has work. So I'm like, I know you got to get your boots. So I'm going to wait for you up here. We're about to do this. I go off. I'm like, what is your problem? I come home. I'm just telling him all of what's going on in my brain. And he's just like, I don't want to deal with this. I got to go to work. He leaves. And I'm like, okay, I guess there's nothing I could do at this point. So he did laundry that day and I'm putting away the laundry and I find a pair of chonies. Not even like cute chonies. They were just like these little average, little pink, gross underwear. And they were smaller than me. At this time, I was a big girl. I was 240 pounds. So I was very insecure. And so I remember sending him a picture and texting like, what the hell? What, really? Like, this is where you were at? Blah, blah. I don't know. Okay, so then he calls me. He's like, you're being too much. I can't deal with you right now. I'm at work. And I'm like, ooh. So I call his mom because her and I had a great relationship. And if I'm being crazy, she'll put me in my place and kind of tell me like, you're being a little crazy. That was the case. And let me tell you about this woman. She does not play. Do not come for her because she will come for you. And I respect it. I love it. So I listened. And it's not her fault. I should have listened to my gut. But anyway, I was being crazy. Next day, he turns his location on, and this is the first day of my client visit, my very first client visit. So I'm nervous. So I've already got all these little butterflies in my stomach, and I check his location because he's not answering. And I'm like, I just want to talk to you because I'm nervous, whatever. He's not answering, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I check his location, and he's in El Segundo, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing in El Segundo? My meeting is starting in 2 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So I'm putting the pieces together from yesterday. You were on the 105 freeway, now you're in El Segundo. Who the hell is in El Segundo? I don't know anybody in El Segundo that he's ever mentioned. Losing my mind, okay? I have to sit in this meeting for an hour and this client can talk. It was my first one. I was trying to make a good impression. Oh my gosh, that was a horrible feeling. As soon as that meeting was over, I ran out, and I hadn't ran in years. Like, I'm telling you, your girl was a big one. So I ran out. I call him and call him and call him. He's not answering. I just see his location going back and forth from a Chipotle to a apartment complex, and I'm like, what is going on? So I screenshot these addresses and I text him and I told him, if you do not answer my next call, I don't care where you're at, I'm going to show up. So he finally calls me back conveniently, and I'm like, what the hell? Why are you in El Segundo? I'm just going off already. And he's just like, I'm not. I'm putting air in my tire. I just cleaned my car, and I went to get something to eat. And I'm like, why aren't you answering my calls? And he's like, why do you think you're entitled to me answering all your calls? And I'm like, wait, you're right. Okay. Anyway, so we meet each other at home the same time, and he's just, I don't know. It was weird. He was just off. He was just being weird, whatever. The next day, he is on the 105 freeway again. And I'm like, this is the third day in the row. I did not even have the energy. So I started looking through his phone when he got home. And I started seeing pictures of him, like half without a shirt on, his little chain on. I'm like, I'm not getting these pictures. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to confront him about it yet. We have financial obligations together. So he was showing me a receipt later that night, and he accidentally pulled up a receipt to a hotel called a Loft in El Segundo. It was $500. And in that moment, I'll tell you in part 3. No, I'm just kidding. In that moment, I just had the most clarity I have felt in the entire relationship. I still didn't know who, I still didn't know what, but when I was looking through his phone, I saw he was looking up his ex-girlfriend. She was already pregnant, so I was like, not her. But there was this one girl, and she had a different name. I could not pronounce it. But there was something, I don't know, you just get these gut feelings. And so I'm like, who is this? And so I started doing a little bit of research. You know, I'm a little FBI agent. And I find out that she lives in Washington. And I'm like, LAX, the hotels in El Segundo, and he's been talking about going to Washington for work. I'm sorry, you do not get sent to work or to freaking another state if you're a forklift driver, okay? Now you got me all mad again. No, just kidding. I just couldn't get the words out. But anyway, so all these things are kind of clicking, and he had to go pick up his son right as soon as I saw that receipt, and he pulled the phone away, whatever. So he goes to get his son. He calls me. He's terrified. He's like, why are you so calm? And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'm about to slice 3 of these tires because insurance covers 4. I'm about to throw these clothes outside. I'm about to light him on fire. But again, this moment of clarity, I was just like, oh my gosh, thank you, God. I made dinner, had a little beer ready for him when he got home, sat on the table, I ate, and I just looked at him and I was like, I'm done. You have to leave. All classy. I was so proud of myself in that moment, but also I was like, oh, this was your moment to really go crazy like you've been doing all week. But I still didn't know who it was. Like, I know everything. Just tell me. Like, there's nothing to lose. We're done. But for the life of him, he would not tell me anything. And then finally, months later, he decides to give me closure and makes up a whole ass story about how I met her at a Mexican restaurant. She's a waitress. She just made me feel like a man. And I was like, what? So I was like, whatever. I don't care. At that point, I didn't even care anymore. I wanted to know back then. And then he told me the story. Months later after that, a couple years now, I find out it was the girl that I suspected. And I actually, on Christmas Eve, when we were living together, he had a message from this person. And like any normal entitled ex-girlfriend, I called. I don't know where my thought process was at that point, but I called her, and I hit her with woman to woman. Oh, most shameful piece of my life right there. And she was just like, we're not in a romantic relationship, but it should come from him. And I'm like, girl, you can have him. Like, I want you to know you have my blessing. You can have him. And she's just like, oh, it's not like that. And I'm just like, damn, man. Like, you don't even want to claim him? So anyway, we get off the phone and I'm like, okay, you're out. So he moves out, and months later, I find out it's her that I spoke to on the phone. He moves to Washington. I hear that he's engaged. He and I have a cordial relationship. We had some untied or loose ends or whatever the hell it's called. And so we have a cordial relationship, and to this day, he's not engaged to this and that. I don't care. This was the best learning experience that I had. It was the most difficult, and it was extremely hard because I felt like I had nothing at the end of this, but I had myself, and I love who I am today and who I was back then. Realistically, we both deserved way better, and we have better now. So I hope for him. I don't know how he's gonna get better than that, but just kidding. But realistically, we are just better people without each other, I think. So that was the tea. If you have any questions or you want to know anything else, I'm an open book, so comment below. Let me know how you're feeling about it. Love the feedback. So, alrighty.